All right, we're back. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it shaking. Let's talk a little bit about the status quo. We got some teams who haven't moved at all in the table, and we've got someone else who's the new number one coming out of week 7. Let's talk a little bit about Racing Louisville FC versus Chicago Red Stars. Racing Louisville getting a win, big one, 3-0 over Chicago Red Stars. Weird. And I just keep saying this was the game that set it off in motion, Lisa. This is the game that set off all of the weird energy in week 6 because I thought it was just me. And of course you want to reach out to community. I'm like, you know what? Let me hit up the socials real quick and see what everyone else is sort of, kind of feeling about this game. And it just wasn't. It was. I think I referred to this in the preview. We said like this is going to be a little bit of a wooden spoon game going into this week. Respectfully, it was 11th and 12th teams going head to head in this game, and it looked and felt like that at times throughout this match.
Yes.
Racing Louisville says we're handing it off. That belongs to you. They get on the board not once, not twice, but 3 times, and they've got the win in the regular season finally to jump them up a little bit in the standings as well. We'll go through that at the end of the game, but I think you welcome the return of a player like Savannah DeMelo. We talked about that a lot during the preview of this game. I believe you had Racing as well. I think I had this one pegged as a draw at one point.
Correct.
But you don't ever want to assume that it's going to be like this one player who's going to affect or impact all of this type of change in terms of different looks and things on the pitch. But DeMelo,
massive
everywhere.
Yeah, this is a player that, I mean, you and I talked about it every single week because she was serving her red card suspension last week and Louisville hurt without her in the midfield, without DeMelo. DeMelo now back. She had a full week of rest, full week of training as well, which helps a player like that. And she's a game changer for this Racing Louisville side because not only does she impact the game herself when she's on the ball, the passes that she makes to her players, the incredible vision she has, but the way that she sits in between the lines and can turn defenders, but the players around her elevate. This was one of the greatest games I've seen from Jalen Howell in a minute because that player the same year as DeMelo, they're both in their second season in the NWSL this year. Howell's had some ups and downs, whether she was dealing with injury, the way that she kind of ended last season wasn't how she wanted to end it personally. So she decided to make a change in the off season and she worked her tail off and got trainers and got coaches and did fitness and did nutrition and turned herself around to be one of the greatest players in this league. And because of all that and the hard work, Kim Bjorkegren and the team awarding Jalen Howell as the captain of this team in just her second year playing in the league. She's an incredibly young player, but this was one of the greatest games that we have seen from Jalen Howell. She was growing into the game so much this year. She sat out a couple of games at the start due to injury, but now we're seeing her really finding her footing. She's playing simple, and that's what's working so well as a player in that defensive midfield role. It's wonderful to see Hal kind of taking those strides and get better. And they ultimately try to get on the board in the opening 5 minutes, right, Louisville, and then gets called back on an offside goal, but it didn't matter. They ultimately get 3. It was pretty open, fast-paced this side. And Chicago, they struggled a little bit defensively, building out. I mean, what'd you see from the Chicago side?
I just saw more of the same, which is just a team that is playing an absolutely frustrating season. I mean, the Red Stars it just sort of feels like the Red Stars are having the season that people anticipated them to have last year, essentially. I think you have some examples of 2 teams who are trying to navigate a regular season in light of club sales, Portland Thorns, we'll talk about them soon, but they're a team that's on a bit of a skid there and they haven't had a win in the last 3 games. And we've got Chicago Red Stars who just can't seem to get a win anywhere, really. They pick up their 5th loss of the season, have 1 win, 1 draw at this point. I think you have all of the off the pitch things that are out of their control. And I think you add in an on the pitch thing no little thing. We're talking about Mallory Swanson, and they just don't have a lot of answers right now. And I think you look to your coaching staff to try to provide some of those answers, and it's just not matching, on the pitch, unfortunately. And I think when you have defensive pieces, who are making their way back. I mean, we're looking at Casey Kruger, who's in her first season back after, from maternity leave. Trina Davidson off of, an ACL rehabilitation. And you're still asking this team at times to sort of play in this 3-back and not really getting midfield support. I think that gets frustrating. I think that gets tough as a player mentally to be asked to go out there week to week and know you are just going to be constantly overloaded. And, it's tough. It's tough. I can't imagine that, you're going to get to a point in the season where you can no longer sort of say like it's early and we need to try to work on this and we need to, get back to fundamentals, et cetera, et cetera. 7 weeks of the season are gone. We're in the full swing of the second quarter of the season. Eventually, in a few weeks here, we're going to talk about the halfway point.
Oh, gosh.
And I don't know if there's a lot of answers for the Chicago Red Stars team in light of all of the others, right, that are happening off the pitch for this team. So I think it's another tragic example of lack of support, lack of resources, just a lack of unknowns, really. Maybe not so much the resources and the support, but there's just real question marks around everything else around the team. And unfortunately, you never want to see that, bleed into performances. But that's a tough loss. That's a tough loss on the road. I think you don't have, players don't want to talk after a game like that, and rightfully so. I believe it was just Chris Petroselli who was available for post game. I think in that, and I think when you're the head coach in that position, right, you make yourself available, obviously. But those are tough. I think all of that is very telling. So I don't know if there's a point where you sort of say like, oh, let's try to get a result and let's try to get a win, and that's really going to turn things around. But I think you just sort of have to try to listen to the players when they're trying to be honest and when they're trying to be open. And, just even off of that loss against Gotham with Alyssa Nair being available post game, kind of alluding to that, saying this was an incredibly challenging year for the team.
Yeah.
In a number of ways. So,
I mean, there are so many different ways, right? Off the pitch, on the pitch, the injuries that they've suffered, the questions that they've asked of other players. It was rough. It's kind of rough to watch this game, rough to watch Chicago fall apart this way as well. Like you never want to see players not be able to perform at their highest or perform really well. And we just did not see that at all from Chicago. On the flip side, I think Louisville, they had some individual performances that were really impressive because Louisville ends up, of course, 3 goals, but the way they come about is it's a forced own goal. Alyssa Nair, it's a shot that it's a penalty kick actually from Savannah DeMelo, and Monahan ends up drawing the penalty kick, and DeMelo hits it off the post and it hits off Alyssa Nair's back. Actually very similar to like A.D. Franch's own goal that happened for Kansas City, except one was run of play and one was a penalty kick. The second goal for Racing Louisville also coming off of a penalty kick. This one by Wang Shuang, her first goal in the NWSL. Massive to see from her, that coming in the stoppage time at the end of the first half. And then at the very, very tail end of the game, the 89th minute, Parker Goins gets the third and final goal for Racing Louisville, just to kind of seal the deal at the end of the game. I mean, tough to watch, I know, for Chicago fans. Great for Louisville fans, though. They were excited to have the Lavender and Mint get the win.
For sure. I think teams that, again, at this phase and stretch of the season, if you're a bottom half table team, not even like a last or second to last place team, if you're just like a bottom half table team, you look for those games that'll be that kind of springboard for you moving forward and maybe try to take that leap. And I think, having Shayna Matthews available during that Kansas City Current, that one win that they had, I think obviously showed some promise, but then you have Racing Louisville, who's able to get a win like this, and maybe this will be the springboard for them, and they can try to continue to go ahead and build off that. Yep. But it's going to come down to executing tactics on the pitch, and we'll see if they'll continue to build on that moving forward. So we've got Chicago, unfortunately, still at the bottom of the standings in this one, but we've got a new number one when we're talking about the league table. Talking about the Washington Spirit, baby. Number one, a 1-0 win over Angel City FC. But why this way? What a game. It comes down to VAR. It comes down to a penalty kick. And Ashley Hatch delivers. Absolutely. Talk about pressure.
Totally.
Talk about pressure. Stoppage time. That is not an easy penalty to convert. That is not an easy place to execute a penalty, but she goes ahead and does it after 90 minutes plus of a scoreless affair between these two sides. I enjoyed this game. I think there may be stretches of it where folks were like, this is like getting a little out of control. Maybe the officiating is trying to get involved a little bit out of control. But listen, it gave NWSL After Dark.
Yeah, I mean, I liked this game for what it's worth. I'm really happy for Washington to stay undefeated. Frankly, you and I both had Washington Spirit getting the win over Angel City. Just something about Rodman getting a full midweek rest, as with Andy Sullivan. Washington had that Challenge Cup game last week, and those two players did not play. But Washington in this game, they have only conceded 5 times in 7 games. And to get if anything, Aubrey Kingsbury can hang her hat on that, right? That the stingy defense, I think Staub has done a fantastic job, as she usually does, in the center back role. Shout out to Tara McKeown, because as a forward converted into a center back is impressive. But Mark Parsons has laid down a defensive foundation for this side and then given the front line a lot of freedom. And when you say Trinity Rodman and Ashley Sanchez, you have freedom to create. It creates magic. Now, we didn't get to see all that magic during this game, right? But I think there's pieces of it there.
Lisa, 7 weeks in, Washington Spirit number one, already have more wins than they did last year. Call me crazy, but it's almost like selling the team and going through the adversity and trying to come out of that on the other side is helpful. Crazy. Am I crazy?
Not crazy at all. This team goes from winning the NWSL championship in 2021 to only getting 3 wins in 2022 to being week 7 undefeated, top of the table Washington Spirit team right now.
I love to see it.
4 wins on the year for them. I mean, massive. And the style that it came down to, as you talked about, in the final minutes of this game, but it wasn't for lack of effort, right? There was an opportunity. I think Sanchez had 1 or 2 really good shots. Didi Hadachich coming up with massive saves on a couple of those, just getting fingertips, parrying the shots wide, because, man, Sanchez can rip a shot or two. Amber Brooks ripped one that looked like it could have knuckled into the side netting. There was opportunities, but ultimately,
I loved the defense in this game. I feel like you and I could speak about that, a bit more. I think in the preview ahead of this game, right? You look at Alyssa Thompson, the rookie for Angel City, Savannah McCaskill getting a bit more freedom with the arrival of Julie Ertz. And then we're looking at the Spirit with Rodman and Sanchez and Hatch. And we're just like, man, this game is going to be fire in the attacking third. And that the defense flipped the script. They flipped the script. It was scoreless for so long. And we have to absolutely shout out Andy Sullivan with the halftime check-in, because there was a lot of energy that was being, exerted on the pitch when you're trying to contain and isolate some things. And Andy Sullivan said, hey, no problems over here, because we're fit as hell.
I know.
She said, we're fit as hell. And look what ended up happening. Ridiculous moments down the stretch. Look, for Angel City as well, Sarah Gordon is back. Stop, period. Okay, Sam Staub, reminding the people of what they may have missed out from her in 2022 with her distribution in her left foot and coming in clutch along the way. I loved this game on the defensive side of things. And unfortunately, it ended with high drama. Folks out there, saying, hey, VAR is not always correct, you know, or having some feelings about it. But there's also folks who are like, listen, that's what VAR is there for, to make sure that you give the extra look and to pull through with the call.
So this happened, right? So the way that it happened, stoppage time at the end of this game, there's a shot that's taken by Marissa Shiva, I think, right at the top of the 18-yard box. And Vignola is defending, and the ball kind of hits her upper body, and her hands are above her head. So then the ball rolls up and hits her arms. And immediately it's called a penalty kick. Then they go through a very, very, very lengthy VAR review to determine if it is and what's going to happen. Ultimately, it's determined as a handball inside the box penalty kick given to Ashley Hatch. She buries it in the 94th minute of this game. So incredible goal. That's how Washington gets the win. But this is a handball. I think it is a handball. It is a handball. And the fact that the official caught it in real time and got it correctly, I think is super impressive. No, maybe it's not fair, but like, this sport isn't always fair. Her hands are above her head. They're in an unnatural position, and it stops the ball from moving forward. That's a handball 110% of the time. And because of this goal, Ashley Hatch then gets her 5th on the year. She takes the lead as goal scorer of the NWSL with 5 goals in 7 weeks, and the Golden Boot race is on.
It's early, but it's definitely on.